you just want to talk with me, then I can go home. I promise you.
My dear Calm, the days here seem to be getting longer and harder. Or maybe I'm just getting weaker and weaker. Is this the communist paradise they told us about?
Major John Ripley served 2 tours in Vietnam and earned the Navy Cross. To you I present Major John Ripley.
Is it worth supporting the Vietnamese in their fight against communism? Let me tell you, it is.
You know what they're really doing over there? Killing for the American businessman. Imagine that, huh? Getting medals for killing babies. Hey! There's no fighting in my bar!
This is not a prison. This is a re-education camp.
Long live Ho Chi Minh!
Long live Ho Chi Minh! Long live Ho Chi Minh!
Long live Ho Chi Minh!
Still show no gratitude! That is exactly what they want us to do. Fighting among each other.
You listen to me. Look at me.
I don't want to go home in a box.
There are 700 of us, Ripley. There are probably about 20,000 communists over the river.
But if we can hold a bridge, we can defend Dong Ha.
My order is to hold Dong Ha. We will fight in Dong Ha, and we will die in Dong Ha.
The jungles are the walls of our prison. But we think of escape every day.
When you come home, I will be here waiting for you.
I promise you, Count. I will come home to you. I promise you.
Kính chào quý vị và các bạn. Hôm nay là ngày rất là đẹp trời. Nó hơi nóng một chút xíu ở Dallas Fort Worth, nhưng mà chúng tôi là Denton xin cảm ơn anh giám đốc Lê Thành của đài Sài Gòn TV đã cho phép chúng tôi một buổi hội luận ngày hôm nay với anh Richard Botkin và anh Tuấn Nguyễn từ Florida. Anh Richard, I thank you for your time, and I know you have a very busy schedule and fly to Dallas and meeting with us to show your wonderful book, Ride the Thunder, and the movie that you are the executive producer that been successfully shown in Westminster, Houston, and many places in West Coast. And again, thank you for coming here and share that, beautiful messages that you send to not only Vietnamese community but around the world about the truth about the Vietnam War. Richard, why Ride the Thunder?
Well, thank you for having me here, and it's a great honor to be on with the Vietnamese community. The Vietnamese community has supported us greatly. It's important now to tell the truth. The history of the Vietnam War has not been told truthfully, and soon we're going to lose the American Vietnam veterans and so many of the Vietnamese Americans who can tell the truth. And if we don't correct all the lies and half-truths and mistruths that are out there, it's going to be the communist version of history that stands. And we just can't allow that. The truth has to be told. And that's what we're trying to do in Ride the Thunder, tell the truth.
The message you send out, the truth. What is it exactly you tell the truth about Vietnam War?
Well, we believe that, number one, the American effort in Vietnam was the right thing. To stop communism was the right thing. America was right to stop the communists, and the South Vietnamese were worthy of the American sacrifice. And the other thing people don't realize, of course, most of the older people in the Vietnamese community know, but the rest of America and even the young Vietnamese do not understand the price paid by the Vietnamese in the South. I mean, they paid a tremendous price to keep from being enslaved by the communists.
Yeah, that's the answer from anh Richard Botkin. Anh là một người đã có một cái tấm lòng rất là rộng lượng. Anh đã dùng hết tất cả cái số tiền dành dụm được của anh để đưa ra một cái movie tell the world about the truth, sự thật về chiến tranh Việt Nam, tại sao chúng ta lost. Chúng tôi xin giới thiệu đến quý vị anh Tuấn Nguyễn. Xin anh Tuấn gửi lời chào với khán giả đài Sài Gòn TV.
Chúng tôi là Tuấn Nguyễn, xin có lời chào thân ái đến tất cả các khán giả của đài Sài Gòn TV.
Xin anh cho biết anh là làm gì ở Florida và tại sao anh có mặt ngày hôm nay ở đây thưa anh?
Dạ thưa quý vị, chúng tôi làm việc cho ban truyền thông của Liên minh Trong người Việt Nam Tự do và Dân chủ, mà tiếng Anh được gọi là CFDV, tức là Coalition for Free and Democratic Vietnam Channel. Chúng tôi đăng tải những cái bản tin để nói về những sinh hoạt và những hoạt động của chúng tôi và những thành tích chúng tôi đạt được trong nhiều năm qua, nhất là trong việc quốc tế vận để ủng hộ các nhà đấu tranh trong nước.
Vâng, cảm ơn anh. Xin anh let me talk to you about English so that our brother Richard Botkin can understand what we're talking about. What do you think about the movie Ride the Thunder? What do you get out from that? What is your suggestion to our Vietnamese communities in Dallas-Fort Worth have to do in order to support the truth?
I personally think that Richard did a great job by producing this movie. That helped the community, especially usually there's a gap between the younger and the older generation in the Vietnamese community. And usually the parent came here to US due to the hectic work life, and they don't have time to share, and we do not have the tradition to pass on what is bad, what happened unfortunately in our life to our children, younger generation. We prefer to have them have a better life with all the best preparation they could. So a lot of suffering that the parent generation has sacrificed during the war and after the war, they do not pass on to their children. And I think that's an important legacy. So there's a kind of war, psychological war between the parent and the children. By having this movie, Richard has helped us, speaking on behalf of the parent generation with a very impartial voice, because he's American. He didn't involve in the Vietnam War. So what he said there will be an objective view about that. And in a way, the younger generation can understand better the sacrifice their parents have to gone through so that they could live in freedom and to be successful in America.
Do you have any question for Richard Botkin about what you... I know that you did not see the movie yet because you told me that you want to save that for the last thing before you interview Mr. Botkin.
Exactly, that's right, because I prefer not to see the movie. So in all my question to Richard will truthfully come from my heart, my curiosity about the movie, like the same way you will find out about it. So Richard, through all the books that I read on the Vietnam War, the South Vietnamese army soldier are being portrayed as corrupt, as incompetent. What made you think otherwise?
Well, I'll tell you, when I started this project, I thought the same thing. I started this project in 2003, and then I started doing my own research, interviewing the American Marines who served as advisors, co-vans, with the Vietnamese, and meeting so many of the Vietnamese Marines and Army enlisted men and officers. And I was so shocked that the Vietnamese weren't cowards. They weren't all corrupt. And that at the end of the war, they were fighting and beating the communists. And that is a story that is lost on most Americans. And we have to get that changed in history. If we don't do it, again, it's going to be the communist version of history that stands. You go to Vietnam today, there is no mention, anything positive, about the anti-communist Vietnamese, the Southerners, and there's certainly nothing positive about the Americans there. It's all about the My Lai massacre and Agent Orange.
Thank you, Richard. And note the fact that you seem to imply that had U.S. Congress did not cut the fund for the South Vietnam could have prevailed.
We don't know for sure that the South would have won. I strongly believe, though, that if the South Vietnamese had been given the weapons, the petroleum products, everything to supply them, that there was a strong chance they could have at least kept the North out. The North Vietnamese were losing far more people, but all they had to do was outweight the Americans. And in the end, unfortunately, the Russians and the Chinese turned out to be better allies than the United States did. It was the American Congress that, beginning in 1973, began to cut funding. So the Vietnamese had planes, they had weapons, but if you don't have oil or gasoline, or you don't have bombs, an airplane is worthless. The Chinese and the Russians were not so constrained, and again, they turned out to be better allies than the United States did. It was a tremendous travesty.
Okay, Richard, why do you choose the word triumph and honor when the Vietnam veteran, upon their return to America, were not honored, were not welcome?
Right.
So why such a subtitle?
Well, I do think there is honor. The American effort, separate from the Vietnamese effort, the men who went there fought honorably in general. Most Americans remember William Calley. He was the lieutenant in charge of the Army unit that was involved in the My Lai massacre. That was dishonorable. But 99.9% of the American servicemen who went to Vietnam did their jobs, fought honorably, fought nobly. And the Vietnamese, when I studied the Vietnamese Marine Corps in particular, I mean, these people fought so hard that the casualties they took to secure their victories were amazing, and yet history paid no attention to that. I think it's important that history remember the effort. And again, there is upside. The Vietnam War did not end the way that we wanted it to end, but the American and South Vietnamese combined efforts slowed communism down enough in Southeast Asia that the rest of the countries were able to develop free of communist influence. There were active insurgencies in the Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand. The American effort counted for something, and the best quotes I have on that come from Lee Kuan Yew, who was the Prime Minister of Singapore. The American effort and the South Vietnamese effort bought time for the rest of Asia.